IT Insights InsurTalk. Interviews with insurance leaders about what matters to the industry.
Hi, I'm Eva Banaś and I'd like to welcome you to another episode of IT Insights InsurTalk series by Future Processing. This episode is quite special since it marks the end of the first season of the InsurTalk series. However, no worries, season 2 coming soon, so stay tuned. In this episode, we will continue the topic related to delegated authority and digitalization of underwriting. Today, my guest is Michael Keating, CEO at Managing General Agents Association. Michael, thank you for inviting us here to your headquarters and agreeing to contribute to our InsurTalk series.
Good afternoon and welcome, and looking forward to having a good conversation.
Likewise. So before we move on to the topic, I've heard that there's quite a story behind you and football. If you could, give us an overview, what happened?
Okay, well, I don't think I've told this story too often.
Even better.
But even some of my friends might say I never stopped talking about it from that perspective. But when I worked at AXA were the sponsors of the FA Cup. And we had the opportunity to play at Wembley Stadium prior to Wembley Stadium being refurbished. And on the game I played, I scored a hat-trick. And one of those goals was from 35 yards out. So there you are. And I have it on video if anyone wants to.
So there's a proof.
Challenge. There is proof on it from there. So
wow.
An interesting fact or not, maybe.
Very interesting. Wow. Congrats.
Thank you.
For sure. And how did you actually end up in insurance?
Straight from school, actually.
Really?
From school, yeah. So,
but was it an accident? Because that's what I hear often in the industry.
I think I am certainly in the majority that I fell into insurance rather than chose it. But having been in the industry now over 40 years, I'll say that quietly, I wouldn't change anything for the world. It's a great industry, fantastic people, excellent community, network, friends which you meet and remain friends for life. So I wouldn't change it.
Perfect. That's a great introduction to our questions for today, actually. So to begin with an overview, how important is the MGAA market sector within the London market?
Well, so two things really. So first and foremost, the MGA sector overall is the fastest growing part of the UK sort of insurance market. And there's a number of sort of reasons why that's doing, both entrepreneurism, innovation, underwriting expertise, insurers having far more confidence in deploying capital to specialist sort of underwriters. If you look and focus solely on the London market, all the attributes I've just described are embedded in the London market as well. So international MGAs are based in the London market. There are UK domiciled sort of MGAs in the London market. If you then look at Lloyd's, so Lloyd's worldwide has over 3,000 cover holders. Now, not all of those would be MGAs, but a large proportion would be MGAs. And Lloyd's also have 600 UK cover holders, and a large amount of those would be MGAs as well. So the community of MGAs is absolutely critical and part of the fabric of the London market, where previously, if you went back 10, 20 years, it was a smaller element of the London market community. But now I say it's part of the fabric, brings underwriting expertise and insight into specialisms which is just not mirrored elsewhere.
And how did the old process of underwriting look like in the past for MGA?
I think you have to insert technology in terms of where that change is. So if you're asked the question, what's been the biggest change in old school with the quill pen and what we have now, then technology runs completely through that. And that technology is, it's at various levels. So, there's the transactional bordereaux, where, electronic transactional bordereaux, is now, should be the norm. I'm not saying that is the norm because sometimes you still have the old fashioned. There's the binding of business, which would all be very much paper led as opposed to electronic. So that, if there's one overall change, and it wouldn't be a surprise to anyone listening, it would be, you know, the impact of technology in terms of removing frictional costs, two, having a greater communication between all the stakeholders through that sort of technology, and fundamentally the which is really important is that the use of technology which allows you know, greater satisfaction to the end customer. You know, we're all consumers ourselves. We all have at some point, unfortunately, may have a claim. So the greater use of technology, you know, be it in the overall market or London market, should allow, you know, improved and more speedy customer satisfaction in the claims process in particular, which is what we all within the industry want to aspire to.
Yeah, and this is something we cannot forget, because this human touch is so crucial, especially in claims processing.
Yeah, it is.
And it is this, let's say, common thing that I hear over session and session after every single conference, that human touch, human participation is crucial, and we cannot forget, simply speaking, as you mentioned.
And you raise a very good point, because again, I was at a claims conference recently, and what was interesting was around the use, and I know we'll come on to it, around AI and chatbots, GPT. And Consumer Intelligence gave a very, very insightful presentation which showed that when they did a survey for end consumers, and what was extremely clear, that 8 out of 10 consumers wanted to speak to a human and didn't want to use a chat box or an automated sort of response to get through a triage. And I think what that message gave us in the industry is that you need to be combining technology with the human touch, not looking to replace one with the other. And I think personally, I think the industry needs to keep that very much at its forefront in its mind, in terms of as it continues to deploy technology, that it's not all about replacement, it's around harmony. And I think that's an important message.
A symbiosis, so to speak,
Yeah.
between those two.
Yeah.
And you already mentioned AI. How can it improve the underwriting process in the future, or like already is actually improving? Because from what I know, members are already implementing it in the processes.
Yeah, so I think if I look at our membership and look at a lot of MGAs, so they are deploying AI first and foremost in their operational efficiency, effectively, and the ability to increase productivity and to remove frictional costs. So, you know, there are examples of some of our members will use AI to triage broker presentations, which will then actually strip out information which is not relevant or required to price and assess the risk. And of course, if you do that effectively, then, you know, what that means is that your underwriting team's productivity is going to increase, because they don't have to spend time themselves sort of doing that from that perspective. I think the introduction of AI around underwriting and pricing, I think that's at its early stages. But the message both from the market, the experts who actually have been developing AI tools, is that first and foremost, before you invest in any AI capability, you have to take a step back and have a clear business plan and strategy in terms of what you want to get and how you're going to deploy it. You know, experts quite rightly and commentators say there is too much haste to actually get on the, you know, sort of the race to import AI without having a clear strategy and a deployment plan as to what the benefits you want to achieve. And the danger of that, of course, is that you deploy something and then have to reverse it out because you haven't got the strategy or the plan correct. So that's a key message, I think, which, as I say, you know, I would share with my members, you know, having spoke to sort of a number of experts who are operating in the AI technology space.
Yeah, so AI being a tool to achieve strategic goals, not the other way around.
Yeah, you have to, you know, there's always a danger of wanting to keep up with the neighbours, and if they have an AI box, then let's have an AI box. But you want to ensure that...
But do we need it, right?
Yeah,
that would be
exactly.
The question to ask,
do we need
really.
it? And if we do need it, how are we going to deploy it? And also, coming back to my earlier point, it's not a panacea just to reduce headcount. It's not a panacea just to do that. And coming back to my point, it should work in harmony with you know the human interaction from that piece. Because if you boil AI down completely, you know, effectively, what does it do? It mimics human behaviour. That's what it does. So it doesn't replace human behaviour. But very exciting times. You know, there's no doubt, you know, if we spoke again in 12 months' time, the industry and the market would have moved on. But I think it's right to sort of have some caution in terms of how you deploy it. And again, you know, very important, I think, not to repeat, never lose sight of end customers' views on chat box and that bit, you know, so because you'll lose customers against someone who doesn't deploy it.
Yeah, couldn't agree more with this one.
Yeah, very true.
And what would digital underwriting transformation look like from the perspective of an MGA? And the next question would be regarding the perspective of the delegated authority capacity provider. So we can compare.
Yeah, I think, you know, they should be in harmony, because, you know, if I take the last question first, if you have an insurer who's looking to deploy capital to an MGA in a certain specialist segment, you know, providing, you know, that's a partnership, and all through the steps of that partnership, both in negotiation, onboarding, should be completely aligned so that there's nothing sort of left off the table. Now, when you insert digitalisation, when you insert potentially AI, both parties have to be on the same page. You can't have one sort of slightly unbalanced and whatever. So that could be the provision of management information. It can be the sort of risk appetite, risk selection. It could be pricing. It could be claims. So all these things need to be reviewed, discussed, shared, have all the stakeholders around the table at the same time, so that when you actually start off on your journey as a partner and binding business, that there's no surprises and there's no gaps in terms of what you're doing. I think in terms of the digital side, which, you know, is already in place. So I've touched on electronic bordereaux, which, you know, have been for quite a period of time. You know, the ability to use APIs actually so that everyone's looking at the same time one set of data. You know, the famous sort of cliche around let's have one version of the truth is so important, certainly between an MGA and a capacity partner, where, you know, the underlying principle is that the capacity provider is providing capital for you as an MGA to give an underwriting return on. And if you're only looking at one set of common data, therefore it's an interpretation of that data as opposed to we've got half the data, you've got half the data. And I think the important part of that, I think from a digital perspective, is the import of claims. I think there's a great opportunity in terms of, you know, the digitalisation of claims, both in terms of data, the richness of the data, the alignment and how you import that data and how that matches premium as well as heads of cover within the products. I think there's great opportunities where that one version of the truth can actually have even a smaller margin of error, where you know, there's too much time, I believe, and I've experienced myself, where MGAs are having conversations around underwriting performance. Is it as bad or is it as good, depending on which end of the telescope you're looking at, and that is underpinned by poor data or incomplete data. So if we can get the digitalisation to resolve and solve that as much as we can, then that conversation should move around not having a discussion about performance, but having discussions about how can we grow more profitably, which is what you want to spend your time on, not arguing about, you know, the data from there. So I think it's there's a lot the market can do. There's a lot the market is doing, but as all these things, it's around the communication. It's around the inclusivity of all stakeholders who have, a valid contribution to make, and do not leave stakeholders out of that conversation, because that will only slow you down when you get to the day of reckoning.
Yeah, definitely. And if we could get a bit more imaginative, what is the art of possible, the perfect utopia of digital underwriting?
I think you have to balance that with the human touch, which we talked about.
Yes.
So I think, utopia will be where, the electronic data exchange around risk appetite, risk assessment, pricing with an underwriting intervention, operational efficiency. Whereas that, if I had my old MGA hat on, or if I was previously when I was working for an insurer, that the majority of my time and conversations with my partners is all around profitable growth, development, innovation, how much more can we do, because we are completely relaxed and extremely confident that the machines and everything else operationally is working to everybody's satisfaction and at an optimum, which allows us to have more rich conversations around what we should be doing, is providing products, service and delivery to customers we've currently got, but more importantly, customers we don't yet have.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's all about business after all.
Correct.
Thank you, Michael, for sharing your stories, your use cases together with us today. And thank you, our audience, for listening to yet another episode of IT Insights InsurTalk series by Future Processing. See you in the second season.
IT Insights talks on business and IT challenges with tech leaders. Visit us at itinsights.tech and dive into our podcasts, webinars and events.